This week on Vaticano, travel with us to the Italian city of Carrara and discover the precious marble that was used in sculpting Michelangelo's Pietà. Stay with us, find out about the first Christian homes underneath the Church of St. John and Paul in Rome. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. What looks like snow-covered mountains in Carrara are actually quarries of pure white marble gleaming under the Tuscan sun. Handpicked, carved, sanded and polished, this Italian marble was chosen for a 1.5-ton tomb of a lady who's been under canonization since 2016 by Archbishop Aquila of Denver, Colorado. Her name is Julia Greeley. Resting in the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Denver, the tomb of Carrara marble matches the existing stone in the basilica that came from Marble, Colorado. Natural stone materials, expert design, Eric Marshall works on many projects with Colorado marble, but he knew there was only one place to go for Julia's tomb: Carrara, Italy.
We chose to go directly to Carrara because, of course, the material is notably the most beautiful white marble of the best quality for carving and rendering to high detail. As you'll see with some of the bas-relief that are present on the top of the tomb for the emblem of the Archbishop. And then we've additionally carved a Sacred Heart that is a part of a medallia that is placed on the front of the tomb.
But who is Julia Greeley? Born into slavery between 1833 and 1848, she worked under many white families in Missouri, Wyoming, and New Mexico, but mostly in Denver, Colorado. Left with one eye from a cruel slave master's whip, she was freed from emancipation in 1865. Julia remained in Denver to work domestically for Denver's first governor, and his devout Catholic wife was a strong instrument in Julia's conversion to the Catholic faith. Despite growing up in a life of suffering, Julia had a heart for others. When her personal belongings were spent, she begged for food and clothing on the streets with her little red wagon for those in need. She realized that even white, poor people were embarrassed by receiving aid from a black woman, so she worked during the night to deliver goods on people's doorsteps. Although Julia had arthritis, her charity was non-stop. She died in 1918 and has become known as Denver's Angel of Charity. Of all the marble in the world, Eric Marshall traveled to a small town in Italy because of its relationship with Michelangelo. Michelangelo came to Carrara to search for the perfect blocks of marble that he wanted to create his world-renowned masterpieces like the David and the Pietà.
The reason why we chose to do the work here in Italy is because of the traditions of the Italians having the most notable experience with the local material, and also the classic interests of doing ecclesiastical works here for the Catholic Church.
Carving is no easy task. Each type of marble has limitations based on size, cut, carve, and clarity. It takes years of studying architecture and sculpture to develop an artistic eye to select the perfect marble for each project.
And this is a material that renders a very nice warm white background with limited veining that allows for an expression that is of classical clarity that enamors one to feel present in what you would imagine to be in St. Peter's or other prestigious churches in other parts of Italy. In this particular case, a tomb is something that of a focal point, you want balance and you want a minimalist approach in the veining or the character to not distract from the beautiful engravings and carved reliefs and coffers that are set into the stone.
This elegant design renders the person of Julia Greeley perfectly. It mirrors her beauty and her delicate charity.
The masters of the trade of carving stone is something for me that rings a priority of importance for all of my work, because I think that to do something in stone is intended to last and to have integrity, But when it can make a statement and when it can have a story that is behind it beyond just an expression in architecture, to me, the balance of the art and the story is something that brings it to another level.
I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. These the very words of the first Roman Emperor Augustus, which was found in the Res Gestae Divi Augusti, a sort of will that the Roman Emperor himself drafted 1 year before his death in 14 AD. The great marble constructions of the period were commissioned by Augustus. They were all built near the Pomerium, the sacred and inviolable boundary of the city of Rome, such as, for instance, the Ara Pacis, the Temple of Caesar, and the Temple of Mars Ultor, which was erected inside the Forum of Augustus. Even though they're all single works, these structures have one distinctive element in common: the so-called white marble of Carrara, considered today one of the finest marbles in the world. This type of marble is named after the Tuscan town where it's extracted and has been a protagonist of the Italian Renaissance thanks to Michelangelo Buonarroti, the famous sculptor who from this very limestone gave life to works such as the Pietà, the Moses, and the David. But what's so special about this marble? What are the features that make it so unique? To answer these questions, we spoke to Dr. Carlo Musetti, geologist and technician at the Carrara marble quarries.
Carrara è il complesso metamorfico delle Alpi Apuane.
The metamorphic complex of the Apuan Alps, where the Carrara marble is quarried, is a unique mountain chain from a geological point of view. Here in geological times, so millions of years ago, certain geological conditions occurred, which led to the formation of particular limestone deposits in a clean sea with calm, clear waters and coral reefs, and with a certain quantity of living organisms. During their genesis, that is to say, the formation of the mountain chain, this sedimentary material was covered by thrust sheets, also called nappes, which cause an increase in temperature and pressure on this limestone layer. This way, this sedimentary limestone transformed under the pressure of heat and recrystallized into what you see today, which is this white marble.
The uniqueness of this marble, as explained by Dr. Musetti, is due to its usage patterns and its robustness.
Le caratteristiche fisico-meccaniche del marmo di Carrara, oltre al valore estetico.
What sets the Carrara marble apart from other marbles from other parts of the world are, besides its aesthetic value, its physical mechanical features. Thanks to them, the Carrara marble can be cut into specific dimensions and used as a structural element, so for columns, for architraves. Therefore, it has physical mechanical resistance, which is different to Greek marble, Turkish marble, as well as to the marble from the United States, where quarries of beautiful marble can be found, with similar physical mechanical characteristics to the Carrara marble, but never exactly the same.
Si avvicinano, ma non sono mai come quelle del marmo di Carrara.
From these mountains, coated in snow-white marble, nestled amongst the Apuan Alps mountain chain, comes the marble that was used to build the cathedral dedicated to Andrew the Apostle in the historic center of the town of Carrara. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. The current church, almost completely covered in Apuan Alps marble, is the result of several building campaigns, started at the end of the 11th century. Completed only in the second half of the 15th century, the cathedral shows three distinctive constructing phases, thus revealing a stylistic transition from the Romanesque style to the Gothic. the facade, a large marble wheel window with 20 spokes stands out, which symbolizes the city's coat of arms. On it, there's the engraving Fortitudo mea in rota, which means, my strength is in the wheel. The evocative and mysterious light that seeps through its many windows pierces the cathedral's inner space and emphasizes the fine marble works that are part of its interior decoration, like, for example, the pulpit, a mandatory element in Romanesque churches, the baptismal font, perfectly symmetrical to the altar dedicated to the Madonna del Popolo, patroness of Carrara. And finally, the enormous wooden crucifix from the 14th century hanging above the high altar, which is impossible not to notice. The cathedral is also a guardian of the patrons of the marble quarry workers, represented by the so-called altar of the 4 crowned martyrs, who, according to tradition, were 4 Christian stonemasons who suffered martyrdom under the Emperor Diocletian. Right behind these marble wonders lie the stories of men, quarrymen, who day by day, piece by piece, offer artists and sculptors the possibility to give life to their creations. These stories are embodied by Alvise Lazzareschi, who was born and bred in the marble quarries.
I have no recollection of an ancestor who was not a quarryman. I have been coming to the quarry every day for 37 years now, and I cannot remember any ancestor of mine who had a different job. If you are a quarryman, you belong to your job. You are kind of born into it. You were born into it because it was the job of your father, of your grandfather, of your great-grandfather. And so you've been hanging around the quarry since you were a child, and you've always lived this reality.
Alvise decided to write his memoirs in a book that was published in 2016. In it, he sums up his 30-year experience in the management of marble quarries.
Riferendomi a questo mondo, a questi miei ricordi.
With reference to my memories, I have written them down in this book, where I talk about my whole experience, from the time of my childhood until the modern time of marble extraction. I grew up and still live in the small village of Colonnata, which, when I was a child, was exclusively a community of quarrymen. I narrate about this job because I've been a witness. At the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, the job underwent a deep transformation from being a strictly manual job at the time of my childhood to the time when modern technologies were introduced.
All'avvento delle moderne tecnologie.
The job of a quarryman is unusual and harsh.
È questo un lavoro particolare nel senso che
this is a special job, meaning that with all the problems that occur, it is never monotonous. The quarry is tended by respecting these joints, which are natural joints, so every day you come across a different situation. Every day, different extracting solutions must be sought. It is important that the whole quarry team takes part in the problem-solving process. The job of the quarryman is not mechanical. There's no foreman who decides what to do and workers who obey his orders. The whole quarryman team takes part in the works of the quarry, and this is what's special about this job, something very particular.
Una peculiarità, una cosa molto particolare.
An uneasy natural beauty of the Carrara quarries, which also the famous Italian poet Dante Alighieri wanted to immortalize in his Divine Comedy. The quotation is, "The Carrarese who houses underneath, among the marbles, white a cavern had for his abode." In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. A few hundred meters away from the Roman Colosseum stands the unique archaeological complex called the Case Romane del Celio, the Roman houses of the Celian Hill, found under the ancient Basilica of Saints John and Paul. The church is the only one of its kind. The Paleo-Christian facade, crowned by a relatively modern Baroque cupola, perfectly matches with the medieval bell tower, which is decorated with Islamic pottery dishes that were brought as trophies by the Crusaders. This apparently reflects the long-standing history of the basilica, which goes back to the time of the first Christians. Tradition holds that the first building was built in the year 398 by the Roman senator Pamachius, who fashioned the house of the two Christian martyrs John and Paul into a Christian basilica. Today, the relics of the two martyrs are traditionally venerated and placed under the main altar. Also attributed to Senator Pamachius is the semi-legendary Passio, the story of the martyrdom of Saints John and Paul. In the story of the Passio, it's said that the martyrs were eunuchs of Constantina, daughter of Constantine the Great, and were Roman soldiers in Constantine's army. After the political changes that came with the arrival of Emperor Julian the Apostate to the throne, the two brothers were martyred for not betraying the faith of Jesus Christ, being secretly decapitated in their home, where they were later buried. To substantiate this tradition, we went to the archaeological site located beneath the church in search of evidence. Mariana Justinian, expert of the site, greeted us with some surprising news, saying that in fact the Passio was key in identifying the place of the martyrdom of Saints John and Paul. The excavations occurred at the end of the 19th century, organized and commissioned by a Passionist priest, Father Germano di San Stanislao.
Non sapeva che cosa avrebbe trovato.
He didn't know what he was going to find, and the first findings surprised him as they seemed to confirm the tradition narrated in the Passio. He first found elements that pre-existed the church, that are the foundations of a domus. However, this is not surprising in Rome. What did strike Father Germano, though, was the presence of frescoes that displayed Christian symbols.
Padre Germano è la presenza di affreschi che ai suoi occhi sembrarono dettagli cristiani.
What Father Germano found was basically a complex of peasant houses, stables for animals, and shops, later incorporated into a rich and elegant villa containing large rooms, a personal bath, and a courtyard. Archaeological investigations have dated ruins to different stages of the site's development.
Qui siamo in una delle sale più belle.
We are in one of the most beautiful rooms where you can appreciate the perfect state of conservation of these environments. This is the so-called Nymphaeum of Proserpina. We should picture it as a courtyard with an open ceiling. It was built around the second half of the 3rd century AD by the new owner, who replaced the old commercial areas, the shops and warehouses, with a new residential building on the ground floor.
Terra di un'isola, una nuova abitazione.
The scene we see in the fresco represents the culminating moment of the pagan myth of Nympha Proserpina and her return back to earth that symbolizes the beginning of spring.
Questo era uno spazio a cielo aperto, quindi immaginiamo di avere un pergola.
This space had an open ceiling. We should imagine a leafy pergola above, with sun rays piercing through it and coloring the surface of the water, which is a typical element in a nymphaeum. As you can see, all the niches on the wall at the back have marble paneling. The water flowing over the marble panels, reflecting their colors, making cheerful sounds.
Vedete l'elemento a scaletta appoggiato sulla parete?
That element with steps that you can see leaning against the wall was originally placed under the niches. After creating a coating of colored reflections, the water cascaded over it and collected in the central basin. There are also some extremely precious details, like this floor made with large colored marble tiles from the middle of the 4th century AD, and other unimaginable details, like, for example, the window reveal, which still retains its decoration of colored glass mosaic tiles. You can still see the mark of the glass, or anyway, of the closing system that protected this environment. Everything was designed to offer the owner an extremely relaxing space where he could spend blissful moments.
Per I suoi momenti più piacevoli.
The courtyard of Proserpina is a great monument of late pagan art, but Father Germano wasn't satisfied by this discovery, as he was looking for any piece of evidence that could prove the historical nature of the story written in the Passio on the martyrdom of Saints John and Paul.
Proseguendo nei suoi scavi,
In the course of his excavations, Father Germano found one of the most beautiful and most important rooms of the Roman houses on the Caelian Hill, the wonderful Room of the Orant. It is called this way because the female figure above, portrayed with her head covered and in the typical Christian gesture of prayer, immediately touched not only Father Germano, but also all of the scholars who have studied this room decorated with frescoes from the early 4th century AD.
questi sono affreschi
These frescoes, which predate the Edict of Milan and the presence of Christian elements, immediately brought to mind the extremely evocative possibility of considering this as a private house where the first Christians secretly gathered to pray, a domus ecclesia. Scholars have been deeply engrossed by this beautiful hypothesis. Together with the orant, other elements evoking Christian themes are represented in the vault, such as male figures clad like typical philosophers. The philosopher's tunic, a piece of garment symbolizing wisdom, is very often used to portray the apostles' philosophers in their Roman catacombs. We also have goats and lambs, other elements that have supported the fascinating hypothesis of the Domus Ecclesia.
della Domus Ecclesia.
Yet recently, some archaeologists have sown doubts on the Domus Ecclesia hypothesis, because together with Christian elements, the room also contains pagan symbols, such as theatre masks, and figures of a fantastical nature. However, the owner could have been a Christian who had a tendency towards other cultures. Father Germano discovered many other rooms, but what he found in the upper room exceeded all expectations.
Paulusque Johannes, questa potrebbe essere
Paulusque Johannes. This inscription could be the key to unraveling the mystery of the historical identity of the martyrs John and Paul. It is a modern inscription where only a fragment, 3 letters, an N, an I, and an S, belongs to the past. The rest was reconstructed on the basis of a text attributed to Pope Damasus, which we know as part of a medieval collection of epigrams that he dedicated to martyrs and saints.
dedicati da Papa Damaso ai martiri e ai santi.
Pope Damasus is a 4th century pontiff who insisted on the recovery of the cult of saints to encourage Christian communities with their courageous examples. The problem, however, is that there's no certainty that the inscription can really be attributed to that pope.
Se l'iscrizione fosse veramente di Papa Damaso,
If Pope Damasus was actually the author of the inscription, we would have the confirmation, the certainty of the historical identity of John and Paul, and it would be a pontiff who was a contemporary of the 2 brothers, the one to witness their authenticity. Otherwise, we would still have to investigate and try to shed light on the history of this architectural complex, which is definitely a place of Christian worship. I am standing now in a very special place, since it originally was the landing of the staircase that led to the upper floors of the insula. In the middle of the 4th century AD, this place, which was extremely uncomfortable, extremely hard to reach, was converted into a worshiping point for the faithful. To ease the coming and going of the faithful, another staircase here on my left was added to the original one. People could then climb up and down without getting in each other's way and stop to pray in this small chapel, the Confessio, which is exactly above the stairwell.
che si trova esattamente sopra il sottoscala.
In the Passio, which led Father Germano to the rediscovery of the Celio houses, this niche underneath the stairs is the crucial evidence regarding the location of the tombs of Saints Peter and Paul. According to the Passio, other believers were also executed: Crispus, Crispiniano, and Benedetta.
Dal punto di vista archeologico sono state individuate 3
From an archaeological point of view, 3 graves were found, which are exactly under my feet. The small chapel was built right above these graves in the middle of the 4th century. It features very interesting frescoes. There's one in particular which represents a scene of martyrdom. It is a very delicate moment, and maybe it is one of the oldest scenes of Christian martyrdom preserved in Rome. The subject is treated with great sensitivity, since the 3 figures, whom we can identify as Crispus, Crispiano, and Benedetta, are portrayed on their knees with their hands tied behind their backs and their heads bowed. It's us that then imagine the dramatic ending of the story and the sensitivity with which the first Christians approached the subject of martyrdom. Another very interesting element about the chapel is this small window that you can see in its center. If this is actually the chapel dedicated to John and Paul, then that is the Fenestella Confessiones, and the opening that we usually find in the churches built above the graves of martyrs.
Considering all of this evidence, Christian symbols in the Domus Ecclesia room, a piece from an inscription attributed to Pope Damasus, a chapel under the staircase, and very indicative frescoes of the martyrdom, we can conclude that the ancient Passio didn't tell any falsehoods. Since the erection of the basilica, the 2 saints have been greatly venerated, and their names have been inserted in the canon of the Mass. During every Eucharistic celebration, priests from all around the world pronounce the names of Saints John and Paul, asking God that through their merits and prayers, in all things, we shall be protected by God.